All right, I got to get to this word. Acts chapter 7 is going to be our text. It's going to be our last message in our series, We Can't Stay Here. I heard Chris Estrada preached an amazing message last week. If you were here, Pastor Chris from Christ for the Nations preached about humility. And everybody loves hearing about humility, right? It's like, he told me that he was preaching about humility. I said, okay, I'm not gonna be there. I don't want to hear that one. That's a joke, in case you're wondering. It's like, never ask God for patience, you know. He never gives you patience. He gives you something to be patient about. So it's like you got to be strategic in what you ask God. If you just ask him for patience, you're going to get married. Yeah, so you ask him for patience, you might have a kid. It's just what happens. You got to ask, Lord, just help me have patience in these situations. Careful how you word it, you know. You got to watch out. You don't want to hurt yourself. Today, we're ending this series, We Can't Stay Here, Part 3. Acts chapter 7, we're going to start with verse 21. I'm going to read through verse 29. It says, when he was placed, when he is positioned, when he was set up outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his own people, the Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian, so he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. I want you to see that. I don't know if it's still on the screen. It says, he thought that the people would recognize that God was using him, but they did not. The next day, Moses came upon two Israelites who were fighting. He tried to reconcile them by saying, men, you are brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other? But the man who was mistreating the other pushed Moses aside and said, who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? Verse 29, when Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had two sons. Where he settled. We've been wondering what it's going to sound like when it rains in this building. That's what it sounds like. It's raining outside. I don't know if you can hear that. He settled as a foreigner and had two sons. He settled. Everybody just say settled for a second. Settled. I'm going to set something up for you in the next couple minutes, and I believe God's going to speak straight to you. Sometimes when God speaks straight to you, it doesn't always feel good. Okay, so everybody just get ready, because at first it doesn't feel good, but whatever doesn't feel, a lot of times what doesn't feel good usually yields a good reward. Like when you go lift weights, I don't know anybody, actually I do know a couple crazy people, but when they go to the gym, it hurts, and they're like, yes, I want more of that. And it's like, okay, you're on something. You're weird. But then most of us, when you work out, it hurts, but there is a reward that you're trying to get to, so you push through the pain. Today, I need you to push through the pain of about 10 minutes so that we can get to the reward of where God's taking. It kind of sounds like your life, doesn't it? It says there's always processes that God takes us through, and if the process is right, we say the product is guaranteed. If I can be faithful in the process of life, God will develop in me what He needs to develop so I can be what I need to be and have the strength to do what God's called me to do. There is nothing worse than getting in a position where you have to have strength and you don't have it. There is nothing worse than facing a tragedy without the inner courage or strength or wherewithal to make it through it. That's why God takes us through situations that strengthen us and develop us and give us character and perseverance so that we can make it through this journey we call life. Settle means to adopt a more steady or secure style of life. Settle. To adopt a more steady or secure style of life. You know what I call this? I call this the American dream. Isn't that the American dream? to find a safe, secure, to have enough money, to have enough friends, to have enough popularity, to have enough influence. I can settle in this. I've finally got to it. You know what I found? And I was actually talking with a very successful man this weekend, and we sat down. I was at a big event, and so we were in Dallas, and it was a very successful man, and he sat down with me in the hotel lobby. We were talking, kind of swapping stories, and he said, Dustin, I'm going to tell you something. And I was getting ready. He's about to give me some wisdom, some education. So I'm going to tell you something. Whatever you think that when you get to, that will be it, is not it. He said, if it's money, you will get there, and you will still be unsatisfied. He said, if it's influence, you will get there and still be unsatisfied. And I'm like, yeah, but there's some things that if you got there, it would make it a little bit. He said, no, you have to settle something deep within your own soul. Because those things will continue to grab from you and continue to be out there. Once you get one finish line, there's another finish line. You're never going to get to the place where you say, oh yeah, I got enough. That's why you have billionaires that are wanting to commit suicide. They have everything that we could ever hope for or dream of, and yet they are still unsatisfied. But yet the American dream continues to be, I just want to settle. I want to get to a place of safety and security. The enemy wants to reduce your reduce your life and your existence down to merely surviving. Just getting by, just getting there. I was talking with Jude last week. We were in Washington, and so I was preaching a couple different places. Flew to Boise and preached. Came back to Washington. We went on a big hike as a family, and so up in the Pacific Northwest. It's gorgeous. Some of you maybe saw some of our pictures. I mean, just like we're like posting everything. It's like, oh, mountains, trees. We can breathe again, and it was amazing. But I was talking with Jude, my oldest son, and I said, Jude, what do you want to be when you grow up? He says, maybe a fishy. I was hoping for something a little bit, I don't know, just a little different than that. And I said, no, really, like what do you want to be when you grow up? He goes, okay, a lion. All right, a lion. I mean, it's whatever. You know what's really interesting to me is the young mind is not restricted by possibility. It is free to imagine, free to dream, free to have just massive goals or aspirations. He's free to think that someday he's going to be a lion. And that's okay because he hasn't been, well, we would say he hasn't matured enough yet to understand he is only what he is. And that's all he can be. Everything in our life tries to get us to settle. The older you get, we say, the more mature we get. I say, the more aware of the impossibilities of life that we become. Well, I just am what I am. I'm a blue-collar worker. That's what I'll always be. I have what I have. I'll do what I do. And we settle. Well, I finally got my $60K a year with the retirement plan. Don't settle there. You can't settle there just because you found some safety, just because you found some security. This American dream thing has to go because it's not God's dream for your life. It is not God's desire for you and for your family to just find a place of safety and security. Although He'll protect you, although He'll watch over you, there is something God put deep down inside of you that can only be fulfilled by you. There is no other Dustin Bates on the planet that can do what I can do. But there's no you that can do what you can do. We need you, and we need you to be faithful to your assignment. But your assignment is not reached or accomplished or completed by settling. Comfort will always be your enemy, but you have to choose not to settle there. See, this is the story of Moses, and I'll give you a little background. Acts was written by the Dr. Luke, and it's an amazing story of the beginning of the church and the first acts of the apostles, and Stephen is about to be stoned as the first martyr in the Bible, and he begins to go through this dialogue of happenings in the Old Testament, and he begins to speak of Moses in Acts chapter 7, and he says, Moses, man, he was placed at a certain position. He was at a certain place. That's where... In that day, the Egyptians were killing off all the Israelite children 2 years old and younger. Moses was a baby. So it says they placed Moses in a basket and placed him in the river. Most of us would concur that because they placed him in a river and they set him out, he was placed there, that he was destined to die. But what was, in our human eyes, his destruction was God's setup to get him educated by the best people of that day so that he could be a deliverer. The problem is we want everything all together, don't we? We want everything right now. We want everything microwavable. We want everything just right there. So Moses is placed out there. Verse 21, we read this. It says he was placed outside. God will always position you for your assignment. God will always position you for your assignment. Guess what? The reason that you live in Allen, Texas, Plano, Texas, McKinney, Texas, is not just because you had a job offer or just because you came here. It's because God positioned you. Well, I chose to come here. Right. You're being played. Because you actually think you're in charge. You actually think you're in control. God doesn't cause everything, but he does use everything. And the fact that you ended up in Texas, the fact that my family is living in Texas, God placed me here. God positioned me here because he has an assignment for my life. You're positioned here, and you have an assignment that is on your life. We did an old series back in the movement days, back in the day when I was youth pastor, called My City, My Time. Because when you talk to young people, the thing that they want, no matter how good their city is, no matter how good their situation is I can't wait to go to college. I can't wait to get out. I'm like, you live in Allen, Texas. Nobody buys their 16-year-old brand new Camaros where I come from, okay? That's only, it's like, oh, it's a 2015. It's like, wait, what? You got a car? I mean, it's like, but our young people are spoiled to think that, oh, man, I just can't wait to get out of here. And they go to something new thinking that the new thing is going to be the thing. And it's only a matter of time before I can't wait to get out of college. There's nothing to do in Lubbock. There's nothing to do in... It's like you were dying to go here for 12 years, and now you're there, and you can't wait till you can get out so you can get a job. It's like, and everybody with the job says, what? You have summer break. You have semesters. Like, what's your problem? Like, there's no semesters in real life. There's no summer break with a real job. I just can't wait to get out of college, get a real job, make some real money, make your $32,000 a year. I mean, it's like we're never satisfied where we're at. But if we could see that where we're at actually plays a factor in where we're going, maybe it would change the perspective or the patience level that we have in the midst of where we are. Everywhere that God's placed you is for a strategic purpose. And I found this out, and I was homeschooled, and I even learned this, is that if you don't pass the test, you don't get to take the next test. And so some of you have taken the same test over and over and over and over again, and you're shaking your fist at God, and God's saying, maybe you should pass it. See, I told you it's going to be hard just for a second. I mean, we're going to ease up in a minute. Just smile break. Smile at somebody. God's placed you here for a reason. Moses was positioned. You have been placed where you are for a specific purpose. What looked like the end of Moses was God's preparation for Moses' assignment. Verse 22 says Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and in action. You got to understand this. When Moses was pulled out of the water by Pharaoh's people, and he was chosen, if you don't know your Bible, he was chosen to be a deliverer of the Israelite people who had been in captivity for over 400 years. When he was pulled out, he was pulled into Pharaoh's palace in enemy territory. The Hebrews were slaves. The Israelites were slaves. They had no one that could educate someone in the finer things of life or in the power of speech and action. But because God positioned him in a certain place, he was educated in a certain palace. And because he was educated in a certain palace, he was set up to deliver the people of Israel. He was set up. He was educated. Everything you have ever gone through in your life is education for your assignment. I'll just say that again for somebody. Everything you have ever gone through in your life is education for your assignment. God positioned Moses for him to acquire the skills he needed for the next season. The problem is when we start acquiring skills, but we don't know where to use them, we get mad at God again. Why are you taking me through this? Why are you teaching me how to speak? I'm not a speaker. I'm never gonna speak. Moses needed that later. When God chose him to be the deliverer of the Israelite people, and he says, I want you to go and speak. I want you to go and speak to Pharaoh. And he began, and we've learned this weeks ago from this text, is that he began to make excuses. I don't know how to speak. I'm a stutterer. I don't have it. But he was educated with the best educators of the day. What happened is, after a season of settling, he forgot what God put in him. God put in him in the beginning what he would need for the journey. But in the midst of settling in the wilderness, he forgot what he was good at. You ever been hit with by life so hard that you forgot what it felt like to win? To win? You know, after you lose so many times, you lose confidence. People that have great confidence are usually people that have won in succession. Football teams that play, and we got some great football teams that be playing today. I love the NFL. I love the football season is back. And the Cowboys going to be playing tonight. So that's nice. And it's after all the services, so I can watch it. That's great. Seahawks will be here this afternoon, and I can't watch that because we have Sunday night service. But anyways, these NFL teams, they're great. But you know what really gives a team confidence is winning. And if you can't win, but you have confidence, you're seen as an idiot. You're seen as a hypocrite. You're seen as empty. Confidence really, I'm not saying that everything in life is about winning and losing, but I will say this, that if you won a lot, you have confidence. That's just how it is. I've seen people so beat down by life that are so gifted and so talented, but they've lost at life, or they've lost at marriage, or they've lost at a relationship, and they feel like they have nothing to offer. And that's not the case. It's just they've lost so much that they forgot who they are. I'd like to just propose this to you. Maybe God positioned you in life so that you would learn what you need to learn to fulfill the assignment that God's put in your life. And even in the midst of difficulty, losses, trials, crises, circumstances that are beyond your control, I want to encourage you to not let go of what God taught you in that season. Because even though you haven't used it for years, that gift was put in you for a reason. Some of you, you know right now, you're a leader. But you've never had an opportunity to lead. Stop being mad at people not seeing the gift in you, and thank God that He's preparing it in you for the right season at the right time. God put in Moses what he would need later in his life, and God used what the enemy meant for evil for good. God will use it in your life. Whatever the enemy meant for evil, He will turn it around for good. Now, I said all of that to just set up where I'm going to go in the last 15 minutes. I'm saying all of that to get you to understand that everything in life will get you to try to settle. That even in your spiritual journey, you can settle. Isn't that nice? It's like you start serving God and you get involved in church and maybe you're leading a group and it's like, all right, I'm doing all right. And you settle into a safe, secure Christian life. Maybe your eternity is figured out, but you still have work to do on this earth. There is still tasks and assignments that you are meant to accomplish, to carry out. And we need you in this fight. The subject matter, the text, our title is We Can't Stay Here. And I'm gonna show you from Moses' life over the next couple moments how you cannot stay where you are. I want to provoke you this morning. I want to stir you up. I want to try to prod you, push you just a little bit to the point that says, wait, I thought this was it, but this was just a setup for where I'm about to go. Right now, my today is just a setup for what my assignment is going to be, what my destiny is going to be. To not stay here, to not stay in this place, to not settle. There's a couple things that we got to do. And the first thing is you don't believe the press. I'll break this down for you. Don't believe the press. Verse 25 says, Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. What do you do when you know you're gifted, but you're the only one that knows? You know what I'm saying? What do you do when you know you got something? I mean, you know you got it, but no one else knows. I don't know if you've ever felt, I felt like this before. It's just like, wait, I'm more than this, but my job tells me I'm not. I'm more than this, but my relationships tell me I'm not. Moses was gifted by God, and he knew that he wasn't just a regular guy. He knew there was something of greatness in him. And it says that he took matters into his own hands, and he went to the Israelite that was the Egyptian that was mistreating the Israelite, and he took it into his own hands, and he thought, I will rescue them. I will rescue him, and then they will see that I'm gifted. And it says, but they did not. You know what I found a lot of people is that we live by what other people say about us. And if I'm gifted, but you don't know I'm gifted, then I doubt if I'm really gifted. Because the voice of authority in my life is not God's voice, it's your voice. My Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram tell me what you think about me, and I believe it. I see people on social media, and it's amazing to see the things that they will write. And I've had a privilege of knowing a lot of people that are very well known and on social media have huge followings, and to see the hate that people will post on their accounts, and it says, well, they have 1 million followers, surely they're not going to read it. Can I tell you something? From firsthand experience, I know this from talking to them, they read it. They read it. Because we as a culture are built up and have confidence in what people say about us. God says, I'm gifting you. And Moses says, God's gifted me. And he goes and he tries to use his gift, but nobody saw it. Nobody recognized it. I don't know if you've ever been in a journey of faith where you felt like, God, you've given me something, but nobody sees it. You've given me a task, or you've given me a gift, and no one understands, and no one sees. I can preach, I can teach, I can lead, and nobody sees it. I'm going to tell you that God's gift appoints God's timing. God's gifting awaits God's timing. Don't believe the press. If you live by the praises of men, you will die by their insults. If I'm totally confident by what people say that is good, then I will totally lose my identity when people begin to say things that are bad. Some of us in this room, you've got to catch this, that we cannot be affected by what people say about us. You cannot be affected by the haters in your life, because haters gonna hate. We're gonna have haters out there. It's just what's gonna happen. When you succeed, people are gonna be mad that you succeed. When you take steps towards God, people are gonna be mad that you take steps towards God. You can't do anything right in this world. You can't take one stance, everyone will hate you. You can't take another stance, everything will hate you. We can't turn the music up, everybody hates you. Can't turn the music down, everybody hates you. Can't let everybody sit where they want, everybody hates you. Can't let people not have a seat, everybody hates you. You can't please everybody. So at some point, you've got to get with God, and you've got to recognize what his voice is saying about you and to you, and you have to say, I'm not going to believe the press. I'm going to believe the voice of God, because I'm called by him, I'm chosen by him, I'm ordained by him, and he gifted me, and he's going to use me in his timing. Don't believe the press. The people didn't see his gift. Your gift will be seen by the right people at the right time. Before God, A.W. Tozer says this, before God can use a man greatly, he must first wound him deeply. Before God can use a man greatly, he must wound him deeply. What does that mean? It means this. I wrote this morning, that if you can be gifted and dream, or broken and change the world. See, what Moses had to understand was, though he was gifted, what he was pursuing was a dream, operated and controlled by his own timing and by his own ability. God put a gift in him, but it needed to await God's timing. God gave him a task, but it needed to await God's timing. And when it looked like God was a long time in coming and a far off, he began to take matters into his own hands, and he was frustrated because people didn't see what he had. I'm going to tell you that life will break you down. We know this. Life just has a way of breaking people down. But you know what? Out of your brokenness is where God can use you. If he never broke you, you would think you didn't need him. If you never went through what you went through, you would never think that it was God who brought you out. You would think, this is how we're wired. We would think that, wow, we're doing all right. We're doing all right. Did you know that every time the Israelites thought they were doing all right, the Bible says they forgot their God? You know, our life is a life of dependence on God. This thing is about trust. This thing is about relying on him. This thing is not about getting our way and our timing. This is about God, your God, and I trust you and I rely on you. Don't get caught up or don't believe the press. Number 2, don't get caught up in the mess. All right, I'm going to make it easy for you to remember. Don't believe the press and don't get caught up in the mess. This is what happened is Moses, who was gifted, we see this in verse 26. It says, the next day Moses came upon 2 Israelites who were fighting. He took things into his own hands. It wasn't his time. He tried to reconcile them by saying, men, you're brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other? But the man who was mistreating the other pushed Moses aside and said, who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? When they didn't notice his gift, he took matters into his own hands. How you operate when people don't notice you tells me a lot about who you are. Who you are when people don't give you accolades and don't give you the props that you deserve and don't give you the recognition that you really feel like they should or don't respect you the way that they should, that tells me a lot about who you are. You can see a lot about me by how I react when people don't treat me like I feel like I should be treated. See, we get caught up in the mess by taking things into our own hands. So we know that God's working on us, and we know that there's a situation God's working out, and when it doesn't go our way, we just try to make it happen. I'll make it happen. I'll get another job. I'll make it happen. I'll work harder. I'll do this. And everything that we're doing is in our own strength, trying to accomplish God's plan our way. You know what? It's really dangerous. It's dangerous to take on a God-sized dream with human strength. It is dangerous to take on. God gave you the dream. God said, Moses, you're going to be a deliverer. This is big. This is big time. This is going to be the thing that defines your life. Moses, this is huge. And so then Moses tries to take on a God dream with his strength because he didn't wait for the right time. Can I just encourage you? This is not popular. I know this. Can I just encourage you? Be patient with God. Be patient with God. Be patient with him. Wait a little bit. Hold on a little bit. I'll tell you, our younger generation, they can't wait 3 days for God to come through. I mean, it's like 3 minutes, like, oh, I prayed. And there's no patience. You know what, my grandmother, she used to pray all the way through the night. I mean, I'd be trying to sleep, and she'd be up there, and I'd hear my grandma stomping upstairs, praying. And I was like, what is she doing? Like, is that necessary when you pray? It's like, especially at 3 a.m., she's just stomping. She understood a principle that we have lost sight of. Pray until you get an answer. She actually understood her position before God was not like, hey, God, now. Isn't that how American Christianity is? We come into worship, and worship's not worshiping God for who he is. Worship is like, I like this song. How do I look? I mean, it's not about a humble, contrite heart that comes before God and says, God, you're so good. You're so amazing. Like, thank you for the opportunity to come into your presence and to worship with other believers. You're like, why is he sitting next to me? Why? We are so distracted and so self-focused and self-centered that we completely miss that God has positioned us, God has placed us, God's processing us so that he can develop something in us so that you can be and do what God has called you to be and do. So that he can actually do something in your life, but it takes patience. It takes time for the plan of God to develop. When God takes a long time in coming or we see natural delays, it is easy to try to force something to happen. But we cannot believe the press. We cannot get caught up in the mess. And then we'll end with this, and we cannot settle for less. Don't believe the press. Don't get caught up in the mess. and don't settle for less. What does that mean, don't settle for less? It says this. It says, when Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had 2 sons. In times of struggle or crisis, we often settle in the wrong places. This is interesting to me because Midian was an enemy of Israel throughout the rest of history. Midian, the place where he settled, it actually means judgment. And as I was praying this week, I felt like God began to show me that the things that we often run to is when we do something that backfires, we live under this cloud of judgment. Midian was also known as one of the wealthiest nations or wealthiest groups of people on the earth at that time. So it's interesting that when Moses fled from his assignment, he fled to a place of judgment and comfort. He felt judged, so he ran to comfort. He felt judgment because of what he did, so he ran to comfort. He felt judgment because of the way he acted, so he ran to a place that was comfortable. And it says he settled as a foreigner. Do you know what that tells me? He didn't belong there. He set up camp in a place that he didn't belong. You know what that tells me for you and I? Is that many times when life hits us and we don't understand what's happening, we set up camp at a place called ordinary, at a place called status quo, at a place called comfort where we do not belong. It says he settled there for so long that he had 2 sons. He was never planning on leaving Midian. He said, this is just where I'm going to be. This is safer. This is more secure. This is where I'm going to be. And I would venture to say that many of us came into church this morning, and in our lives, in our jobs, in our relationships, it's like, yeah, I've tried that. Pastor, I tried to step in and do my assignment, but I got hurt. Nobody recognized my gift. And so now I'm here, and I just ran to Midian, and now I'm making great money, and I'm just trying to get safe, and I'm trying to get secure, and I got my 401k, and I got these things. I got my white picket fence, 2.3 kids, 2 cars in the garage. Our American dream, and we just set down our roots as if that is the extent of our existence, to just get to a safe and secure location. But I'm here to push you out of the American dream and into God's dream. You came to this church, Church 1132. This is how it is. It's easier at other churches maybe, but this is how we do it. Is that we want to be everything we can be for the kingdom of God. To know Him, to be strong, and to do not subpar, status quo, or mediocre exploits, but to do everything that God has put in us to do to carry out great exploits. And the reason I'm talking about it, the reason I'm preaching it, because it's in you. You're a man. You're a woman of greatness. There's an assignment that is on your life. God's called you. God's chosen you. God's placed you. God's positioned you for such a time as this. And everything that the enemy will try to do in your life is to try to get you to settle. Settle where you are. When the fight is too strong, we will settle too low. When the fight is too strong, we will settle too low. I was with my family in Northwest. Like I said, we went on a big hike up one of the mountains, and we're with the whole family. So I got Jude in the backpack. My brother Ryan, he's carrying Genesis in the backpack, and we're hiking. And it's different hiking with a 35-pound child on your back than it is with nothing on your back. I just say that. I didn't know if you know that, but it's a little different. It's just like 35-pound lunges, for 2.5 miles straight up. And so I got him on the back, and it was beautiful. It was a perfect day. And there was all of these places where it was just like a beautiful place to camp or a beautiful place to stop. It just wasn't our destination. And there was one point where it's really steep. I mean, like really steep. And I'm looking around like my mom's hiking, Jamie's hiking. My mom's like in her 60s. She's hiking. I'm like, okay, she's doing great. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. There's no way I'm stopping, And so, but I was starting to burn a little bit like, wow, this is, all right, this is intense. Jude's like not staying still, He's like wiggling and hit me in the head. Hulk smash. Hulk smash. And it's like, okay. That needs to stop. And I'm hiking, and I begin to think about this message. I begin to think about this. When the fight gets too strong, we settle too low. And the reason I was so encouraged, I don't know if it's totally made sense this morning, but the reason I was so excited about delivering this word to you is that I think that some people have just set up camp at low places. And it's not even a bad view. It's not even a bad place. It's just not your destination. And you will never feel like I've made it if you never make it. I know that's real deep. That's sarcastic. It was not deep. You'll never make it if you never make it. It's just real simple. But it's true. I was talking to a businessman the other day, and I said, man, what is the secret, man? What is it to just like get things going and doing and moving? And he says, Dustin, there's only, this is the difference between people who do things and people who don't. I said, okay, I'm wet. I've got my notepad out. I'm just ready. Like the difference between people who do things and those who don't. He says, the people who do things, I'm ready, do things. I waited. Is that it? Is that it? I'm not gonna tweet that. What? Is that all you got? And I began to think about that. Honestly, it's haunted me. The people who do things do things. The people who do things do things. The people who do great exploits do great exploits. You know what keeps us from doing things is the fight that we encounter in the in-between. And if the incline's too steep, if the fight's too great, you know what? Let's just camp right here. Let's just set up camp right here. But I would just hate to get to the end of my life and find out that I settled on a peak that was not the destination. I settled at a place that was comfortable. I settled at a place of pleasure. I settled at a place of spiritual comfort that was okay for me, but it wasn't where God was taking me. And you know what? I totally forgot to read you the scripture. I totally spaced. I need to rewind, okay? Are you all right? I need to rewind. And I'm joking with you. I totally meant to, but I'm going to give it to you. Acts chapter 7, verse 20. It says, we start at verse 21. I need to give you verse 20. Because we start at verse 21 talking about not settling, but you got to read verse 20. Because it says in verse 20, at that time Moses was born, and he was no ordinary child. Let's just stop right there. He was no ordinary child. See, it would have been all right if Moses settled. If he was ordinary, it's all right to live the American dream. If you're ordinary, it's all right to stop where you are and to make that success for you. If you're ordinary, but my Bible says Moses was not ordinary, and I know this about the Word of God, that what was true for Moses in the Old Testament is true for you as the church in the New Testament, and you are not ordinary. You are not just status quo. You are not mediocre. You are not just going to make it by. You're not here just to settle. You're not here just to set up camp wherever you can get comfortable. You are not here for Midian. You are here for the kingdom of God and the assignment that lies within you. And I just want to speak to somebody. I don't know who you are. Maybe you're online. Maybe you're sitting in this room right now. Is that it is time to pull up the tent pegs of the camp of settling and to move on into what you have, because God's hand is on your life. For some of you, I understand this. Like kind of freaks you out. Like, what do you mean? God's hand's on my life. It's this. It's that whatever you're walking through in your life, whatever you've been through, the difficulty, the crisis, the challenges, God's trying to shape you and form you so that you can be what He's called you to be, which I'll just help you with this. Selfishly, the only way that you can really have satisfaction is to be in the direct center of the will of God. So you can run after what you want, but you will never be satisfied there until you get into His will. You get into the place. And that place is trust, and that place is obedience for every step of the way. The enemy will always attempt to get you to settle for escape and give up on assignment. He'll get you to settle for escape. Just get out. Just get out. Just get out. Man, America's going to somewhere in a handbasket. Let's just get out. Let's get out. No, it's not about getting out. It's not about getting out. It's about assignment. It's about assignment. I was listening to a documentary last week talking about people that have changed the world. Primarily people that have changed history have been people under 30 years old. I'm like, I rewound it and listened again, like, wait, what? Primarily the people that have changed. Young people making bold statements. I started thinking about that. What happens when we get older? What happens? Well, just the way it is, kids. This is America. This is the way it is. That belief right there is why we will continue to be the way that we are. Well, that's just what your dad does. That's just who he is. That belief right there is why he will always be what he is. Well, this is just marriage. Have fun while you can. This is just married life. This is just how it is. And it will always be that because of your perspective of what it is. Until somebody says, I will not settle here. I will not stay here. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care how difficult it is. I don't care how challenging it is. You can't keep me here. I will not stay in Midian when my call is in Egypt. I will not stay here. I don't care if it's difficult for me. I'm climbing this mountain. I will not stop. I will not come down because God has an assignment on my life. And I'll tell you, sir, I'll tell you, ma'am, God has an assignment for you, and it is not found at the camp of settling. It is found in the climb of process. Not very fun, not always entertaining, but always worth it. Always worth it. Would you stand up with me? We're going to close. We often do this as we close. If you're new, just stand for a moment. We're going to respond to